right. You guys both sound good. I'm gonna do one small adjustment, just a tiny adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Adjust
All
that
right.
slightly up. All right.
Alrighty.
I'm good. CD seems good. Jay seems good. I think we're all good. No more
Yeah.
no more technical issues, please. Thank you. Really would
For now.
appreciate it.
Yeah, at least at the moment.
Yeah, for this
Until the
moment.
next time.
Yeah, till
Right.
next time. Oh God. Welcome back everybody to the Turn-Based Cynics. I know the show wasn't here last week. I was on a completely different show talking about RPGs, RPG mechanics, and my personal bugbear of a video game known as Legend of Dragoon. Link to that will be in the description. Go on and check that out if you want to see how I really feel about that game fucking sometimes. Turns out 10 years of a break, coming back and actually beating that game relatively quickly makes the game seem a little more positive to me. Who would have thought? All right, joining us this week, we have a very special guest, a friend of mine by the name of UltraJDude. Man, thank you for coming on the show, good sir.
Hello. Yes.
Now,
Yeah, happy to be here.
before I get into the full introduction, Jay, there was something I did not tell you about the last show we ran on this show. I didn't tell you. I left it out. A few shows ago, we had a friend of all of ours, Mega G Wolf, on the show.
I saw he was in the server.
we had Mega G Wolf on the show, and as the show started, you were actually part of a small bit of the conversation in that show. And I'd like to play back a clip of that conversation right now.
Right.
I want your opinion about what
Sure.
was said. So, CD, if you'd be so kind as to play that clip for us.
Of course.
You exist. G, I had a planned opening for the show where I called you a YouTube OG.
Ah.
Would you? All right. So before I do it, would you say that would be appropriate?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I've only been on this fucking platform for what, 12, 13 years at this point? It's been a while.
Because
It's been a few days.
Because the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, I'm gonna have Jay on this show, Ultra Jay on this show,
Oh God.
and I was actually really gonna commit to the OG part when I had him
Yeah,
on
so
the
you
show.
think I'm OG? This is like founder, right? Like,
Ooh.
Yeah. like calling you an OG, I feel like is valid. I feel like if I didn't call Jay an OG,
right?
I'd be like disrespectful as shit. So Jay, I wanted to ask, would you object if I called you a YouTube OG?
I mean, I wouldn't object. I mean, there's like a small handful of people that even before I was doing what I was doing on YouTube, like they were around, like I don't know who the OG would be, but I know like the first person I saw doing it was like Deceased Crab, if you want to get like before
Oh my
the
god!
OG.
Oh my god! I haven't
You
heard.
know?
I haven't heard that name in fucking years.
You're
Jesus.
going prehistoric.
Jesus. I haven't heard anybody say that name in years. God, now I feel old. Oh,
That's gonna be like circa 2000. That's 2006, 2007. I don't know.
yeah,
if I started,
that's.
yeah.
He's.
I think I started 2007 or was it 2006? I honestly don't remember anymore.
I
I
started.
can't remember if it was then.
I started 2008.
Okay.
So like mid to late 2008 was when I came on, and by then by the time
Shadow was created March 2007.
by the time I came around, like shit was already like decently established. Like there was already like that established hierarchy on the platform at that point, which is
Right.
absurd to imagine that the platform had only been around for like 2 years at that point. Like YouTube wasn't that old, like by that point when you really think about it. Like it's kind of crazy to imagine.
Yeah, I think it's like the first YouTube video was what 2005, 2004, somewhere.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Anyways, as I was saying, YouTube OG, indie dev, occasional streamer, And the
Increasingly
man
rare.
and the man who has put many a brainworm in my head during our conversations, UltraJDude is here on the show this week, everybody. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be a fun show. And we're just going to talk about all kinds of interesting things this week. So without any further delay or ado, let's get into the show, ladies and gentlemen, about what has been keeping us busy in the video game realm, what has been keeping our attention, not keeping our attention, or just outright annoying the piss out of us. And I'll go first because it's been more what's been annoying the piss out of me. I've been playing for my channel Pokemon Coliseum because I apparently enjoy beating myself over the head with a brick. That's been fun. I probably never touching this game ever again. I'm never playing this fucking game again. I don't really like. There's not a lot of games I hate. You know, like I don't really have like a game that I like genuinely despise. But this one is pretty fucking close for me. It's a pretty fucking close of a video game where I'm just like, you know, once I'm done with you, you're going back on the shelf, and if I ever pick you up again, it's gonna be out of novelty. It's not gonna be out of a need for completion. I'll let Chugga Conroy keep that fucking badge of honor for himself. He can keep that. I don't know how he does it, because he makes this shit look easy, and I'm just like, God, how much time did you put into this on the back end for this shit? God damn.
Only way you're picking that up again is to combine it with a 2x4.
Yeah, like, nah, never again. Never again. I've also been playing, like, a crap ton of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in my spare time. And, that's incredibly anime. Every time I pick that game up for 3 to 4 hours, I'm like, oh my god, this is so anime. Holy crap, I love it. So, I think I've had, like, almost 20 hours in that.
So you're just about done with the prologue.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's basically surface scratching. For you know, like 20 hours in, it's like, all right, the journey begins.
20 hours in, I now have access to mechanics. Now the game begins. So yeah, that's really been it. I would bring up Animal Crossing, but I don't want to bring up Animal Crossing again on this show. That's like a daily routine for me, and now it's just become a thing. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, gotta get my Animal Crossing in for the next 3 hours. Oh boy. Chores galore. But yeah, that's about it. I don't really have. I bounce around a lot of games right now, just for funs, just to see what I want to play. I have way too many I have to bounce around these days anyways, just out of my own personal desire to like play new things and not have everything be content, so make the best.
That's a hard balance to strike.
Oh, we'll talk about it. Don't worry. We'll get to that. We'll get to that hill. I promise you. We'll get there. It's gonna be a little bit of a hike, but we're gonna get there. Next up to bat is Jay. You're up to bat.
So yeah, like I mean, I've been playing. So I just finished Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful Definitive Edition, which people that don't know, it's a independent RPG released in, I want to say, like 2015, 2016, and it got a major update to port it from RPG Maker to Unity, and they added like a bunch of new content and stuff. And I don't know, it's always been an interesting and fascinating game because your party members, they're nothing in that game is sacred. Nothing feels safe. And mechanically, story-wise, everything, all of that ties together to kind of create this experience where, you know, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's hilarious, sometimes it's it can be pretty insightful or heartfelt, and then, like, you know, you find a guy, you catch him trying to take a dump, and then he joins your party. You know, like it's one of those kinds of games where you don't know what you're gonna see next. And it's just a fascinating game because everything in it, being as expendable as it is, like say you really like that guy, well then you might lose him during a mandatory Russian roulette session, and he's just gone. That's it. You know,
Oh,
it's,
the George R. R. Martin approach to game design.
yeah, but I mean, you can pick who you bet in that too. So like, if you don't like a guy, you go like, no, you go up to bat for me, you know, and he could survive, he could die. Like it's interesting because it's so bold in its approach to party design. You know, it gives you a bunch of recruitable characters, and you can recruit as many or as few as you want. Basically, there's only like 4 mandatory members, but there's something like 30 full recruitable members.
Jesus.
But I've always really enjoyed the game. It's a very it can be funny, but it's also like a very dark game. It has a lot of interesting subject matter, but I feel it handles it in a way that's better than a lot of games that try and handle the same subject matter do it. But it's something I'd say that's like worth checking out if you're interested in like independent RPGs and you're interested in things that just like break the mold and kind of try and break new ground with what they're doing. And it's one of my favorites. But yeah,
Just don't expect anything lightweight, so to speak.
no,
Because goddamn, the
it's
topic is whew.
it's not only just that, it's there's one major topic, and then it just deals with a bunch of other topics, and like sometimes it treats it with humor, sometimes it treats it seriously, and like I feel like it strikes an okay balance. It never, unless you're really going into the really like deep end of some of the optional content, or you're getting towards the end of the game, there's always something that kind of offsets the like the grim aspects of it. Like it'll be like a segment where you have to give up something either very important to you or something like that, or somebody might die, you might like permanently lose some of your skills, something like that. And then the next moment, you know, it's something stupid and ridiculous happens, and you're laughing like 5 minutes after you were just down in the pits, you know?
Just gotta be prepared for that.
That feels like Whiplash. I don't know why. That feels like the video game equivalent of stopping your car too fast and fucking.
The game is fantastic for that. Like that's the whole thing. Is like you're on this ride, you don't know when the brakes are going to slam on, if you're going to go flying out of the windshield, or if it's just going to be a gentle stop. You know, like that's kind of part of the charm of it. You know.
Oh God, my collarbone hurts with you talking about it. Honestly, proverbially speaking. Oh God, I feel it like right here. Yeah, it's miserable.
It'll hurt your soul. It'll hurt you physically. You know,
I guess, but I mean, like, I guess it's one of those things where, like, do you know what you're getting into when you go into it, or is this one of those like surprise? Or is this one of those?
The tagline for the game is sorry. Go ahead.
Or is this one of those situations where like you're like, oh, this looks cool, and then you play it, and you're like, oh, that's what I'm playing.
The tagline for it is the life ruining RPG, and I feel like that's a very apt description for
life ruining RPG.
The life ruining RPG.
Oh man. I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not. I didn't finish college, so I'm really not a marketing guy, but I probably would hesitate a little bit before I'd be like, how do I market my video game? Tagline: life ruining RPG. Perfect.
I mean, there's an audience out there for things like that, and like I just happen to be part of it. Like I also really like both of the Nier games, the first Drakengard, you know, things like that. I like when a game isn't really afraid to make like a cast of characters where like maybe you'll like some of them, but they're all fucked up. Like they're all completely like they're not good people exactly. They're not bad people, but you know.
That's something I really appreciate. Like when it comes to Persona 5, especially my playthrough of Royal, I've been doing a 100% complete 100% confidant run. So I complete all the confidants.
Yeah.
And one of the aspects of doing that is because I have to spend all this time with all these different characters, you're going to hear what I have to say about them at some point. So sometimes, like, I get to the reporter and I'm like, oh, you are a terrible fucking mess of a human being.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
she's
yeah,
horrible.
right.
I've done that run before with 100%.
Yeah, I'm like,
so.
you're a terrible fucking human being. I get to the kid at the arcade and I'm like, oh, all right, you're a fucking mess. Jesus Christ, your mom
He's gotta
is.
be the best, bro.
I'm
He's
like,
gotta be the best.
And
he's a Pokemon trainer. Okay.
I summed it up with, by the end of the game, I was like, all right, look, there are a lot of these people I've had to interact with I do not like outright don't like, but I get it. Like, I don't like you, but I understand, like, how you got here. Like, you're a mess, but I get it. I wouldn't want to, like, hang out with you when this is over, by the way. Like, I'm not coming back to talk to you once we hit rank 10, the friendship's over. I'm not coming back, but that is...
I've solved enough of your problems. I gotta go work on me, you know? Like, it's something I gotta work on me here. You know, I can't keep working on you.
Yeah, because some of these characters, man, like, for every character in Persona 5's Confidant list, where I walk away and go, okay, yeah, that felt good. You have, like, the fucking reporter, or, God, I'm sorry, I keep bringing her up. I'm so, I fucking
well, she's
hate...
like always like, hey kid, I know you're like 16. Wanna get fucked up, bro?
Yeah,
you
like
want some alcohol, bro?
Yeah, like, every time I hang out, like, forever you have her, and then you have one of my favorite characters as a confidant, Yusuke, the fucking artist. And I love him because every time I hang out with him, it's always some goofy bullshit he's pulling me into. And it became this ongoing gag where I'd be like, all right, Yusuke, don't you fucking embarrass me this time. Don't you fucking do it. Then he has my ass at a church posing like fucking Christ because he thinks that shit's artistic. I'm like, God damn it.
And at the end, he'll say, I'm sorry, it'll happen again.
Yeah, every time this man finds a new way to make me go, all right. Unlike the rest of these confidants, I just can't get rid of you. I'm stuck with you. We're co-workers on this, so. Anyways, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to divert the conversation so hard.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, like, you brought up Nier, and every time I think of, like, Nier Automata, all I think is the Pascal choice.
No.
Yeah, the Pascal choice, where, like, you could ask 15 different people what they did, and you will probably get a variety. You'll get a very large variety of answers from the three choices, and everybody will justify their choice differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love about. That's what I love about good writing in a game. You know, that's going back to Lisa again. That's nobody's gonna have the same story about their first playthrough of that game. And that's what fascinates me about it.
All right. I like it. I dig it. Great. All right, CD. Bases are loaded. You're up.
Yeah.
Don't strike out. No
For me, it's been
pressure.
pretty similar with you. I'm kind of jumping around, looking for new games to play. And first one that I tried out was Marvel's Midnight Suns. The XCOM, but with X-Men and other Marvel characters, which I mainly played just the opening bit, but you can instantly see, the combat system is vastly different.
All right.
Because you have essentially card-based combat. You have your characters on the map, and you pull cards, and you use those for attacks and special moves and the like. And then there's a bit of using the environment, as in using obstacles that you can throw into enemies and stuff like that. That's probably going to be interesting to continue playing. Writing wise, we'll see how well it fares. At the beginning, I had a moment of, okay, so we're playing turn-based Diablo now, eh?
Oh yeah,
Because the big bad is Lilith.
the big,
Right.
the big
The
bad.
mother Lilith. Wait, I've seen her before, just recently.
Yeah, I've seen
That seems
this.
familiar.
Picking up a lot of work around the gaming scene lately.
Mhm.
Hey man,
Yeah.
girls got to get paid. I ain't faulting
Yeah.
her for that.
She's gotta eat.
Yeah.
Even if it's other souls, she's gotta eat.
Marvel souls, Diablo souls, it's all the same at the end of the day, man. It's all calories.
That's been the first one. Then I've been casually picking up Tekken 7 a bit, having a look into
Ooh.
that. That's a friend of mine is also currently playing it, so we're just I've just decided, yeah, I'll casually pick that up and see how we fare there. Yeah.
Cool.
Giving my arcade stick a bit more
Use.
work. Yeah.
Use. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I felt the same way when the chat started playing Guilty Gear, and that's all we did for like 7 straight months was nothing but Guilty Gear. Oh god. Oh god.
Which one?
Accent Core Plus, Exard Rev 2, and then Strive. And then we all fell off really hard with Strive. We fell off really we fell off really hard with fucking Strive. That was a mess. That was a fucking mess of a video game. All right.
Yeah, and the last one that I played is probably gonna be the one that I'm gonna be getting quite a few hours out of. It's called Super Robot Wars 30.
Super Robot Wars 30?
Yeah, it's turn-based tactical game.
Oh, okay. I know which one.
Just like Disgaea and all that, and it crosses over lots of mecha anime, like old stuff. Like what's it called? Getter Robo.
All
very many Gundam series, and even old classics from the 80s and 90s. So there's a lot in them that you can cross over, and that's building up to be an interesting story. That's probably gonna be interesting to play.
Something you'll dump some hours into, I assume.
Yep, very likely.
Right. Good shit. Good shit. So
yeah, I think those are supposed to.
Oh no, you first. You first.
I was gonna say, I think like most of those Robot Wars games are all supposed to be like a good 40 to 50 hours plus too, from what I understand. So I have a few friends that play those. I haven't played through one myself. I think I have 30. But I played like the first mission of it, and then I remembered like, oh yeah, missions and tactics games take like an hour plus. I need to have more free time before I work on something like that.
True. Although disabling the animations definitely takes some time off that.
Yeah, I mean you do want to see them like the first time, but then then maybe disable them after that.
Yeah, thankfully you can just do that in between, in front of each battle, so that's nice.
God, now you bring it up. Now I'm starting to remember why I really haven't engaged with a lot of tactics games. With a lot of tactics games lately.
I love the idea of them, but it's just like because of the nature of how they play out and how long the fights are, it's like it's always a thing too, and you can only like quick save in the middle of the battle, so it's like. So I can still lose this after 45 minutes, come back, and have to restart the whole thing.
That reminds me of when I was younger. I was playing Fire Emblem 7 for GBA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And some of those fights, like you said, they could take, like an hour. And
Mhm.
when you're me and you're trying to not lose a single character in a battle,
Yeah.
and you're like 45
Mhm.
minutes in, and you forgot to check the back of your flank where one of your casters has been sitting for the last 7 turns, and a cavalryman from the other team had decided to circle around the map, circle behind you, and now skewer your fucking caster after 45 minutes of mission playing, instantly killing them.
It's one of the few Tactics games I've finished, and I mean that's the exact same story here. There was a few missions where like I'd try and save them and I'd restart it, but the longer ones like that, if somebody died, I was like, no, you're just dead.
You're
You're dead. I just don't care anymore.
You're just
Mm.
I don't care how important you were to my team makeup. I'll figure it out. Like, this is too much. You know?
Yeah, because once you've restarted a mission, because there's a certain level you're willing to tolerate for like a restart. It's like, okay, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, fine, whatever. But like once you get to some of the like later missions where it's like 30, 45 minutes, maybe longer, depending on like if you're trying to explore most of the houses and get items and shit, you're looking at like an hour. And if I get to like the end of the mission and fuck up because one of these jackasses with a bow decides to get crit happy and kill somebody that I just didn't see coming, it's like, how important were you again?
Yeah, right.
You weren't
That's what
on
I
the.
appreciate. Yeah,
Sorry.
go on.
I'm like, you weren't on the front of the box when I bought the game, so I don't think you're that important. So.
You're not the main character. Goodbye.
The game didn't end when you died, so I'm gonna assume I don't need you that badly. I will give some of the later Fire Emblem games credit. At least they seem to be a little bit more mindful of your time, but that's also because they've gotten rid of permadeath, or they've given you the option to not
There's a
have
toggle, basically, yeah. Like, I don't know if it's a toggle or if it's difficulty related, but yeah, it might be
I
both.
think it's separate. Yeah, from what I remember, at least with Awakening, I think it was
Yeah.
a separate toggle. Like you had your normal difficulty toggle and then your permadeath toggle. But yeah, that's certainly a good thing to have as an option. It's I kind of appreciate Nidus Gaia games for that because they don't really do the massively long battles usually. You can get through the stages relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's once you start getting to the optional content, they can start taking a bit longer, but that's generally that's if you want to do it, you know.
Exactly. That's a good thing. You can put in a lot of time into the Disgaea games, but you don't have to.
Yeah,
Right.
you're not that's not like required for completion. God forbid if I want to see the end of a fucking video game.
Yeah, your main story, that's a decent chunk, but it's not overly long. You can get through that in a good amount of time, but then it offers you a lot more to sink your time into.
All right. So I get the luxury of this next topic because I got to bring this one up with the last few guests, which is how we balance our time sometimes between what we do, what we have to do, and how we make sure that all these things don't somehow end up in a giant pot together, mixed up like fucking gumbo. Because I will tell you right now, my biggest problem I've had since I've come back to YouTube, and I'm sure you've had this before, Jay, it is the everything is content, therefore I play nothing in my spare time.
That's an interesting topic to get into in itself. Do you want to begin, or should I just go for it?
I mean, I could go there. I'll go there. Like it's a real problem I've had to deal with over the last couple of years, which is like this fucked up mindset where it's like, man, this would be great content. But then I'm like, man, nobody wants to see me experience this shit for the second time. So I can't play it. But then I'm like, but man, I really want to fucking play this fucking thing, and my schedule is too full on my channel for me to squeeze it in right now, because I'm not trying to squeeze in 4 games again. So then it's like, I play nothing. Nothing gets played in my spare time. Nothing at all. I pick up nothing. Everything is just work related. And that took me so long to get over, to just look at it and just go, fuck it.
Right.
Fuck it. It's either I play it and have a good time, or it sits on my shelf and it never gets played. I might as well. Fuck it. It'll become content at some point. It doesn't have to be content right the fuck now.
Right. It's do you have the thing where sometimes you would sit there, like, this is a thing that I do, or I used to do, I guess, with streaming, where it's like people want to see the first experience way more. They want to see your reaction to it. So it's like, you don't really replay things for streaming or YouTube and things like that.
No.
No?
No. I mean, yeah, like, maybe it depends on the thing. It really depends on the fucking thing. There are some games I'm gonna go back and play regardless.
Yeah.
You know,
You've got to replay your favorites from time to time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and replay certain things, but then there are certain things that I'm just like, I beat it. I'm done. I don't ever want to touch this shit ever again. Please, I don't. I'm done. But I think a lot of that mentality for me comes from the fact that I primarily focus around RPGs, and I feel like there is a little bit more baggage to that, because it's one thing if you're talking like a 25-hour action game, right? Where like the investment is only 20, like the investment isn't. It's a lot. Like, I'm not saying 25 hours isn't a lot.
25 hours is a long ass game to me. Like, my ideal is actually between like 10 to 15 hours. That's like the perfect length. 15 to 20, maybe? It starts getting over that. It's like, okay, I don't know. There might be too much game here.
Yeah, like.
And it depends on the game, though. Like, Persona 5 is like 120 hours. I played through that damn thing twice because of the original and Royal. So, like, 240 hours of just out the window like that. You know?
Yeah, no, I respect it. Yeah, like, it's one thing if it's like an action game or something where like the investment to me to go back in my spare time and play it isn't that big. It's another thing if like I play like Ni no Kuni on my channel and I drop like 80 hours onto that just for the channel itself, just towards that playthrough, and then I'm like, am I really ever going to want to go back and do this shit again? Like, even like just for me, like not for anybody else. We're not saying I'm trying to do it for performative reasons. Just fucking for me. Yeah, probably
not in the next few years.
Yeah, probably not. Like, I'll tell you the truth. Once I finish Royal, I'm probably never touching that game again. It is not because the game is bad. It's because
it's a massive time investment.
Yeah, that's like okay, bro, I just hit the Royal content. Like, I just started the Royal content. My gameplay file is at like 132 hours right now. All right? So like the chances I'm going to go back, like I own it on Switch as well, but the chances I'm going to go play it again on Switch anytime soon in the foreseeable future is, I won't say 0, but pretty fucking close
to it.
Yeah, like an existential 0. And
that's sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
I was gonna say that's something I tend to find too with like the whole work balance, free time, and things like that. Is in my free time I like to try and play a variety of different games and stuff like that, because. And this, I don't know if this is like exclusive to more of a developer mentality. I like to try and take in like a little bit of like different pieces of each game. And I try and finish as many as I can, but sometimes I like to play maybe the first few hours. And I was like, okay, I've got the gist of this. If I really like enjoy it, I'll finish it. But if it's something where it's like I got the gist, like I'll pull up a YouTube video on the side while I'm working stuff. I'll kind of like watch through the rest of the game. But it benefits me more, and this is where free time doesn't seem like free time sometimes.
Oh, I love
this. I tend to play games to study them, and I can't switch that off anymore.
Mhm.
Like, I
Oh
look
my
at the
God.
mechanics,
Oh my
In your
God,
and I
mind,
just
yes.
keep looking
you
at
have-
it. It's like,
Oh my
because in your
God.
mind you have the thoughts of, okay, this is designed like this, and they have it done like that, and
how would I
okay.
do this? Okay, how does, like, and
Mhm.
the games that surprise me the most and
Yeah.
that I enjoy the most now are when I'm playing something that's just like it's completely different from anything I'm working on or that I want to work on.
Mhm.
It just kind of comes out of left field. Like I played Zone of the Ender's Second Runner recently, and like I'm not
Mhm.
working on anything like that. I'm not like doing anything like that, and I'm like, this is great. This is incredible. I missed out on this crazy PS2 action game. Like it's just cool. It's crazy. It's over the top. It's fun, and I loved it. And I didn't have to look at it like, okay, but how would I use any of this?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
that's the other kind of everything is content kind of thing.
yeah, I can definitely
different
like
way. Mm.
attest to like that whole research idea, but from like a slightly different angle. Like
Mhm.
for me, research is like trying to understand something, right? So like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there's a lot of like shit in that game, right? So for me, I went about trying to understand like the mechanical aspect of the game before I got into it, because you look at people's opinion of it, and I'm like, oh, the combat's slow. That's interesting. I played Xenoblade Chronicles 1. That seemed just fine. What the fuck are you people talking about? So I started researching, and then I'm like, huh, there's some context missing here that none of you motherfuckers brought up.
Mhm.
So then
Right.
it's like I started learning about like the mechanical aspect, like breaking the game, and then I'm like, man, there's a lot to this fucking game nobody tells you when you decide to start. And we're not even gonna
Mhm.
get into like trying to look up something like Chugger Conroy's fucking playthrough of the game where he like breaks it down piece by piece throughout his playthrough, because I can't.
Mhm.
Like that was
Yeah.
an actual video. Someone did an actual like here's how to get good at here's how to fully understand and play Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Just watch Chugger
Mhm.
Conroy's Let's Play. Video over. The video was like 2 minutes long. I was like, oh, was this an April
Mhm.
Fool's Day joke? No. Oh, cool.
That reminds me of Total Biscuit's video of Does Game Length Matter? Intro, yes! Outro.
It's I do a lot of like research in that regard of trying to like just understand like the nuts and bolts of RPG mechanics, because those are the things that kind of keep me tied down to a game. Like I realize this is going to come off as ridiculous. I think I've told you this in the past, Jay, where like the story matters to me, but the story only keeps me invested for so long.
you gotta have
I
a
will
full course meal with an RPG.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have it all. Like that's the point of an RPG, at least
like
for me.
the story might like refocus me, but if the nuts and bolts, the mechanics, the systems, the multiple things you're leveling up, the fucking all that other shit, if that's not there, yeah, good luck keeping
Then
me.
you might as well just watch the story on YouTube.
Hey, you might as well just watch a fucking anime at that point, because at that point that's all I'm really getting out of it. So I don't know. Most of it for me is just like, oh, that's how this system works, or
Mhm.
oh, this system is mostly just RNG. I never would have guessed that by playing it.
Mm.
Cool. I'll keep that in mind when I play the game and I don't get what I want for 6 hours straight. Fantastic.
And, on that, just a small comment on that. When someone comments like, in Xenoblade the combat system is slow, that almost reminds me of people like complaining about the music in Devil May Cry 5. Like, okay, they complain about the music being bad, and then you find out, the game adapts the music to be as good as your playstyle. Because if you play bad, you get less of the music.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't know how I'd feel about that.
I do remember that from when I was playing it. It's
Mhm.
it's an interesting design choice. Like it works for hyping you up when you're doing really good, but it is one of those things where it feels like if you're not to grips with the gameplay just yet, like you're just starting out, like that first half of the game, it feels like you're missing like half of the soundtrack. It's
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting choice. Like,
Yeah.
it's not one that I would personally make, but like I understand where they're coming from with it. You know, like
So
Yeah.
I kind of want to take some of this time to kind of ask, because I know we've talked about it a little bit, and that was Final
Mhm.
Fantasy 16.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about it, Jay, and I said the
Mhm.
demo was fantastic, but this seems like an action game to me.
it's yeah, it's an action game.
I mean,
It's
you know who designed the battle system and all, so.
yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to give it a fair. I wanted to at least give it a shot before I
Mhm.
just wrote
Yeah.
it off. So, like I've said before, the demo is a well crafted piece of content for about 2 hours worth of content. It is a well crafted piece of content, but how
I
long did
think
that take you to get through?
so I did everything. Like
Oh,
as much of everything as I wanted to do. Like I played through the game once. I played through again on the higher difficulty. I basically like with Final Fantasy, it's one of the few games I like to try and do everything. Because they tend to have like a lot of interesting optional content and things like that, and depending on the entry. But it took me about 92, 93 hours. I mean, I probably got up to like grab food or something at some point, but so let's say 90 hours give or take. um but yeah, like it's a really solid action game, but I feel like Creative Business Unit 3 over at Square, their specialty is just really doing over the top boss design and world building. And they focused on those two things in particular for Final Fantasy 16. And that's it. That's like the main focus of this, the world building and like really good boss fights and combat that generally feels good. Um, and it's not a bad way to design, but it feels like there's something missing from the other parts of the game as a result of that. And I'd say like mileage would vary depending on what you're looking for. If I could personally go back, I would probably only do the first playthrough again, because like playing it twice over like that, it really exacerbates and highlights some of the flaws with it. But it's not a bad game. It's like a solid 8 out of 10. You know, if you're into that. If you're not into like action combat at all, you're probably gonna rate it a lot lower.
wow.
Uh, did you do the second playthrough on the Final Fantasy difficulty?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. I basically I played through to get the platinum trophy, and then I just shelved it.
Mhm.
It's been sitting there since. I'm hoping. So the thing that disappointed me the most is like I like action game super bosses
Mhm.
or extra bosses and things like that, and I like those because as a designer I like to see when developers put something in the game that's built to test everything, that pushes the systems to their absolute limit. How far can we take our gameplay engine? I like things like that, and unfortunately, FF16 doesn't really have anything like that at launch. I bet there
Mhm.
will be a DLC for it.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I knew you had beaten it, but I didn't know you went through it twice. That adds a whole different dimension to what I thought you had experienced with it. 'Cause like I said, I knew you beat it, but
Yeah.
I didn't know you beat it. It was like I want some more, and then went back and got more. So that's,
Yeah.
but yeah, Creative Business Unit, they really are much more suited towards like the world building thing, because I felt
Yeah.
I always kind of felt as I played, I'm like, man, the world they're giving me right now, this universe they're putting me in, that's awesome, right? Like the setup and all these different things you're seeing, this is awesome. Some of the more nuts and bolts shit I've seen, I'm like, okay, I guess
There's a lot of like roots in FF16, and I mean, Creative Business Unit 3, they designed Final Fantasy 14 as well.
Mhm.
And you can kind of see that DNA when you trace the line between the two of like, I like FF14 a lot. I don't necessarily like the progression system because it's a lot of like go from point A to point B to talk to this guy, to watch them talk for 5 minutes, to go to point A to point B to watch them talk, and then maybe you get to do a dungeon, maybe you get to do an encounter in between. And Final Fantasy 16's game flow is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah.
like for an action game, it's like, and it has these big open maps to explore, but there's like nothing in them but the combat and maybe like some items you can pick up for the crafting, which is like the most bare bones crafting you can get. But I still really enjoyed the game. It's just there's bits and pieces missing that could have easily taken the game from the 8 out of 10 that I would give it to like this is my favorite Final Fantasy by far. You know, like if it just had like a few extra pieces and bits. But yeah,
Alright. Uh, when it comes to like that idea of like you mentioned that sometimes you play stuff and you kind of like you're kind of like analyzing it from like that dev perspective, right? You're playing it and you're like,
Yeah.
huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting game design. Has it ever happened to you where you're analyzing it and you're like, huh, I feel like I've made this mistake already?
man,
like you see something that you're like, man, that's an error, and then you like think about it and you're like, oh shit, I've made that error before.
I can't say that I've had that thought, but I have played things where it's like I'm thinking about or in the planning stages of something like I want to work on or I have documents and stuff, and I'll see a game that comes out I'm like, oh, this is really similar to something I want to try. Like let's try that out, and I'll try it, and like the mechanics that they're doing, they're like really similar and stuff, and then I find like maybe I don't want to try this. Like maybe this wasn't, like it's not that it's bad or something. It's just like it ends up playing out in a way that's like different than I imagined, and it makes me like rethink like, okay, maybe I try something else instead of that, or like maybe I change up this bit or this piece or something like that. But like I think that's where sitting down and like playing a lot of stuff and just kind of bouncing between different games like helps.
It
And
essentially
like
saves you time, because otherwise you'd have it in your game and then you play it and then you see, okay, maybe step back again and try it, change it.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it depends on the size of
Mhm.
the project that you're working
Yeah.
on too. Like
Yes.
a lot of prototyping and stuff like that, and it's a pretty popular
Mhm.
thing. Is like prototype fast, and they say prototype
Mhm.
fast and fail fast. I just say prototype fast. I don't think anything's a failure. If you're learning from
Yeah.
it, it's not a failure.
Yeah.
But basically, if you can get something like an engine or a piece of an engine done in like 2 weeks, and even if it's like
Mhm.
janky and chunky and weird and it doesn't play exactly how you want, if you're having fun with just that piece, then it's a piece worth keeping, and you refine it, and then you go on to the next step.
The only like the Anthem problem where the only fun thing about that game was the flying. They got the flying right. It's like that's a great example of game design. It's like, well, we have one part of our game that actually like feels good to do. Too bad the rest of it didn't. But I mean,
And then you read up on it and see, oh, they put it in to put it, take it back out, put it in, take it back out, put it in, take it back out, put it in. Okay. Great development there, guys.
I
For
mean,
having a very strong director with a clean vision is incredibly
Yep.
underrated in the industry, in my opinion.
It's very important.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So when it comes to like the things that you choose to play in your spare time, do you have like a genre or a type of game that you tend to find yourself gravitating towards, or are you pretty open to whatever catches your fancy at that moment in time?
I tend to generally be pretty open. I do play more RPGs than most other things, but in the past, growing up and stuff, like I wasn't a big RPG player. I played a lot more platformers and action games. Like I didn't really understand turn-based games until I rented Final Fantasy IX when I was way younger. But these days, I tend to gravitate more towards the RPGs because it's either I'm replaying something to kind of like look at it and assess like the difficulty balance and level of scaling and things like that, and just kind of see like how does this feel, or I'm just playing it because it gives my hands something to do in my free time that's not necessarily like intensive, like a good turn-based game. I'm not sitting there and hitting the buttons.
Yeah, more
'cause-
relaxing.
Yeah, and
Mm.
like I'm trying to treat my hands a bit better than I used to because I used to do speed running and stuff too, and just like mashing the
Uh,
button and things like that. And like, if I bend my hand like this, I just feel it all in all of those joints all the time now. So it's like
ew.
I got to be a little
Oh.
more careful about that,
Ooh.
especially considering I do art with like a mouse and tablet, and I'm constantly like
Mm-hmm.
craning and clawing the keyboard and all that stuff for all my work
Yeah.
programs.
Mm.
Ooh, yeah, I hadn't. Yeah, I had
Take
never
care of
really thought
yourself.
about, like what kind of strain a speedrunner probably goes through with their hands, especially
Mm-hmm.
if they're grinding out like a world first or some bullshit. Oh God.
Or just retro games before there were before there was really like anti mash. I mean, like some games still do like the mash thing, but there's
Mm-hmm.
games are getting better about it. Like now it's like a hold to do this, or just push the
Yeah.
button once and it'll do it. But yeah, like all that
You have
mashing
turbo
it
buttons and stuff like that. Hmm.
yeah, like turbo buttons are becoming more of like a hot button topic in the
Mm-hmm.
speedrun community too. Of like, do we allow these? Should we allow these? Do we make different categories? That kind of thing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how that panned out because I just remember it being a big thing last year or the
Mm-hmm.
year before. But yeah,
Yeah,
like
makes sense depending on the category. Yeah.
right. I just
Yeah.
honestly think like if you're not destroying your hands and you're still enjoying like doing speedrunning and stuff, like
Yeah.
it should be something that's like allowed, like but I mean, then people make the argument too of like, well, you can't like if you're like an Olympic runner, you can't just not destroy your knees and things like that. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
It's one of those misery likes company kind of fucking things. I feel like where it's like, well, I had to suffer to get here, motherfucker. You have to suffer to get here. It's like, but do I really though?
like
Like,
who wants to play the trauma? Like who wants to play like the oh my because I went through this trauma, you should too. It's like that's no. You went through that so you can tell other people to not do that. Like what
yeah,
is wrong with you?
yeah. That's
you know?
yeah. Like I said, that's some misery loves company BS that I don't necessarily like. I'm not like I get it, and I think this is a great segue to something that I've always kind of want. We've talked about on the show a few times, and that's the notion of accessibility in games. Now, I want to
Mm-hmm.
focus this a little bit. I'm going to focus this down a little bit more, right, than just
Mm-hmm.
accessibility. When people talk about accessibility, I find that there tends to be a couple of different arguments. The first argument is that accessibility means that anyone who buys the game has the right to see the end, right? Like, I paid for it. Accessibility means I should be able to see the end of the game. Whereas I tend to look at accessibility and say, okay, accessibility should be that everyone should be on an equal playing field when playing the game, right? There should be nothing standing between you and interfacing with the game in a reasonable aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what, like, physical whatever. You should be able to
Yeah.
interface with that game with the same level of maybe not the same with the same baseline level of ability, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like move forward, move back, press buttons, all that shit. That should all be balanced. That should be on a balanced playing field. Whether or not you can get to the end, motherfucker, I'm a little bit less. I don't know if that's just like the curmudgeon in me being like, I have to fight to get to the end. You should have to fight to get to the end. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I tend to look at it. I don't.
I,
I kind of wanted your. Where do you stand? Do
I
you stand
tend
on one of those
to
two? Do you tend to stand on one of those two camps, or do you have like your own? Your own.
I mean the latter camp that you're talking about, like I'm a bit closer to that, but I feel like there's a balance that you can strike all around, right? Like there's accessibility on a level of like, okay, how can we as developers make it so that the player can engage with the game and get the same experience as anybody else, right? That's what you were basically describing. But to take it a step further too, um, I do think that like difficulty is also like pretty important too. Like I think just because it's on my mind and it's like one of the few games I can think of right now from the indie scene, is Celeste has accessibility in the sense that you can play the game and you can. It's almost like it's not a cheat. I guess it is, but it lets you infinitely air dash, right? Like if you're really struggling with some of the stuff in that, and like some of the late game stuff is like minute long screens or multi-minute long screens of just precision jump after precision jump. Like who's to say, if somebody wants to get through that and they want to use that accessibility to do it, like that's more of a difficulty thing. So I think like there's a good balance to strike between there's accessibility that lets players play at any level of difficulty and engage with the game in the same way that anyone else would, like things like colorblind options or
Right.
text
right.
options. Text options are actually becoming a thing for me now. Like I should probably look
Mhm.
at getting some damn glasses at some point, but I keep putting
Hmm.
it off. But like sometimes I'll be like looking at the text, I'm like, God damn, what's it say? It's like I got a 60-inch screen, I should be able to read that. So I'm glad they're starting to include just like large
Uh-huh.
text options. But
Yeah.
things like
Yeah,
text,
stuff
things
like
like
that is important because especially if it's already too small on the big screen. If you have,
yeah,
for
like
example, switch handheld options,
right.
then um you have two pixels of text. You're never gonna read that.
Yeah, it's the 8 by 8 font problem. Like if you have an 8 by 8 font, you probably
Uh-huh.
want to double size it, 16 by 16 then, or even quadruple size it. Especially with how big screens are these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, things like that, things like consideration for,
Mm-hmm.
like there's accessibility controllers now, but not everyone has
Mm-hmm.
access to those or isn't going to buy one of those. So I always try and think too, like, um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and not everyone's going to have the same issues, but I always try and think like, how, if at all possible, could I make a control scheme for something I'm working on for people to play with, say, if they only have the ability to use one hand? Like I try and
Mm-hmm.
think, how would I do that with a keyboard? How would I maybe do that with a controller if it's possible?
Mm-hmm.
Just things like that. And then on the other end, I think of like, well, difficulty wise, if people just want to turn off all the difficulty of the game, they just want to like read the story. Okay, sure, like you can be invincible now, you can do this, but just make them toggles, like let people engage with the game in any way that they want to engage with the game. And not every game is going to have the same difficulty options. Like some people want to
Mm-hmm.
make a difficult game that's going to be
Yeah.
difficult and it's built to be difficult so the people that beat it have bragging rights, and like at that point, okay, sure, don't put in the difficulty
Do
stuff,
you
you know?
Mm-hmm.
that's actually a really interesting point. I'm happy you said that. I'm happy you
Mm-hmm.
went there because I wanted to segue to that specifically because I oftentimes see that anytime someone brings up, well, the game is difficult because that's what the devs want, and people say, well, that's
Mm-hmm.
a moral failing of the dev for not having accessibility. Would you necessarily say like is that would you classify that as just like an artistic thing? Like my game's difficult by artistic direction, or would you necessarily go like they don't have like that kind of accessibility option? That's sort of a failing on them ethically or morally, so to speak. I know it's a little bit of a
It's
heavy question, but
well, again, I think like difficulty and accessibility are like two very, very different things. And like I
Yeah.
also think it depends on like the size of the game that you're working on too, and the size of the team, and like what you want
Mm-hmm.
out of it. Um, if you're making a game, let me dial it back for a sec. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're just a small person and you're like working on your first game, or your second game or something, you're just trying to make something small, like you're probably not going to sit there and think about tons and tons of accessibility options. You're probably not going to have like things like colorblind mode or
Mm-hmm.
different fonts and different scaling and things. Like you're just trying to produce something and make something that's like you enjoy, that's fun, and you just want to like put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
um, but the bigger the scope of your game gets and the more people that you want to engage with it, you probably should have like at least a little bit of accessibility to help with that front. So no, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's like a failure of the developer. It depends. Again, it depends on the person. Like
yeah, that's yeah.
But if you are trying to make something that is like if you're making something like, first and foremost, most devs are making something for them that feels personal to them to start with. But if you want to engage other people with it, and you're trying to start a dialogue with your players of like, okay, I'm trying to explain this thing, or I imagine the players feeling this way about this thing, or I want the mechanics to make the players feel this way, or something like that, then you're probably going to start needing to go into that level of accessibility of like, how much can I do to get as many people that are interested in it to engage with it as possible.
All right, fantastic. This is going to be an interesting little segue. I know I put down in the show notes about Baldur's Gate, but I picked I picked a particular article about Baldur's Gate 3 called the article was primarily focused around developers believe that Baldur's Gate 3 shouldn't be raised standards for RPGs, that a case like Baldur's Gate 3 being what it is, being the scope of what it is, should not affect players' standards or what they think that RPGs should be from here on out, because Baldur's Gate 3 is a once in a generational kind of game and therefore should not affect the overall standards that players should have towards games. I found this interesting because there's been quite a few times I think that devs have had interesting perspectives on games. Everything from, I think it was like Ubisoft devs being like mildly annoyed with Elden Ring's success because they didn't think it fits. Yeah. Yeah, being mildly annoyed with Elden Ring's success because they felt the UX was bad, or they felt this wasn't right, and that in any other development company this game would have been rated like a 6, but for Elden Ring it gets a pass, and now it's rated like near perfects across the board.
I remember the screenshot mock-ups of the UIs Elden Ring westernized.
And I picked this article in particular because I find it interesting that like something like Baldur's Gate 3, which in its own right it is alright, the devs have already said that it's like 1,100 hours of individual content. Okay, maybe I don't want to say individual content.
It
like
was I think it was about 100 hours for the complete main story, and then another 100 hours for everything else.
Yeah, everything else. So
something like that.
Some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
And, more power to you. I think that there needs to be at least a little bit of, thought lent to the fact that this is like, what, a 400-man team? Is Larian Studios like...
I think they're not that big.
I don't know how big Larian Studios is.
I think they're really not that big.
400 people, maybe? 400?
Although, yeah.
400?
400 plus, apparently, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That would make sense.
They probably got...
of that.
Yeah, they probably increased their size during the development of Baldur's Gate 3, would be my guess.
Well, Dungeons and Dragons is like huger than it has ever been lately.
Yeah, I like I said, I picked this because I just felt like this was such a unique take for me to see. It's one thing if you don't agree with like a score or like the critical praise of a video game. It's another one to look at a game coming out and go, okay, that is an exception to the rule. Please do not hold us accountable for what this game is about to do. Please don't do that. We don't want to be held.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because I read that article and I totally understand where that article is coming from, in the sense that like it is a massive game, but it is also one of those things where the people that are going to hold games to that higher standard are largely, at least, and just in my opinion, they're people that are they're rooted inside the AAA bubble already, right? Like, they expect big things from big developers capable of doing those big things. But if you if you go around and you play like a lot of different things, a lot of different titles and a lot of different games and stuff like that, if you are just like if you play like a bunch of weird little like indie games from itch.io, but sometimes you also play like Red Dead 2, and sometimes you also play like, I don't know, your old Super Nintendo and stuff like that. You're not going to care about that, you know. Baldur's Gate 3 is just going to be another game in a sea of games.
Right. That's a wow. I like that take. That's a good take. Holy shit. Well said. All right.
I'd say it definitely depends very much on the kind of expectation. Because, yeah, I definitely agree with, I wouldn't expect a small team to create a 200-hour game.
Yeah.
Massive thing like that. What I would say is a more reasonable expectation is to produce a quality game that has that has decent standards and isn't, well, since you bring up AAA, there are some recent releases that certainly have not kept up in quality on release, like Jedi Survivor.
I was going to say Last of Us Part 1 for PC, but I didn't really want to go there.
And that too.
Didn't really
Yeah.
want to go
Stuff
there.
like that.
There's also this thing, I feel like, I mean, there is really no excuse for The Last of Us to launch on PC the way it did. But as far as like making new games and like meeting the deadlines and stuff like that, I feel like one of the main problems, and like maybe it's a made up problem, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of developers now, they work on real like high end hardware and high end PCs and high end things like that. So when they say like, oh, these low end specs, they have like probably like one computer in the office that's running that, and they're like, okay, it runs, you know, like. But
I want to kind of segue that though, because it's interesting you say that, because if you look at like Steam Survey, something I do on occasion, like the graphics cards that people have primarily on Steam. The graphics cards that are primarily used on Steam that make up a very decent majority aren't current. We're talking we're talking 10 series. Yeah, we're talking
I think a 1660 is the most widespread still.
Yeah, we're talking like 10 series and 16 series cards make up a strong majority of the cards currently being used on Steam. So when I see a game come out that like its minimum requirements are higher than what is the perceived majority of the people that are actually on Steam, my first thought is, oh, we're aiming for a very different market with this game, aren't we?
Yeah. And I'd say to that point, performance is one thing. I'd agree that you can't always make sure that it runs on in great performance on a lower end system. Bugs and glitches is something a bit different.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be the other half of what I was going to say. There is like AAA deadlines are far more stringent. I mean, like if you are working in that industry, whether it's at a big company that's making a first party title, or especially if you're working at like a second party company that's working with a higher end publisher, you got to meet those deadlines. Those deadlines have got to be met, and it's very I mean, it's becoming more rare to actually have a release date that is the release date that stays that release date, basically. And I don't know what the penalties are for that, because like I'm just an indie guy. I work with other indies, you know, like. But I imagine there's got to be some sort of penalty for missing those deadlines for like a publisher or something, unless you're like, again, developing a first party title.
Yeah, first party titles I think have it the easiest most of the time. Unless you're really trying to hit the launch date of a new console, for example, you probably have the time to get it out in a good way, because that's obviously the system advertisement game, sort of.
Right.
But if it's a third party title, I think a lot of the punishment for the missing dates is probably more indirect. It's like you miss the date, so you miss a good release window, so you get less sales. Obviously, you also planned your advertisement campaigns, so those go into nothing. You paid that, but you're not getting your investment back, essentially. But I don't
Yeah.
think you especially get penalties directly from, for example, the console manufacturer.
Yeah, not from the
I
console
think it's
stuff.
like
It'd be
that.
more like
hmm
probably.
It's
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
direct. It's like you're getting punished by your clients or the advertisers and whoever you want to sell to, essentially,
Yeah,
because they are angry with you for missing the date if you don't announce it ahead
I
of
imagine
time.
the marketing budget would probably be like
hmm
the thing that
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know anything about any of that in the AAA scene.
hmm
There
If it's
was
anything like with movies, then marketing budget is significant.
there was one other thing about Baldur's Gate 3 I wanted to bring up.
hmm
Not It's not negative, it's not positive. It's just something
hmm
that I hadn't even considered that was like an expectation, but this article decided to list it as
Uh-huh.
something that was going to be happen, which was that early access saves will not transfer to the
Ah,
main game.
right. Right.
And when I saw that in the title, I was like, was that an
hmm
expectation that we had for this? Because I've heard stories about people putting dozens and dozens of hours into their characters on the early access, and that's like only like one fucking chapter. So I was like, was there the expectation that our saves would transfer? I just I always try to look at it as like an expectation thing. Like, was that already an expectation that people had, or are they just trying to meet people at the bend before it gets there and just like, your saves won't transfer, guys. Just letting y'all know. You,
It was mentioned, I think, in the early access release
hmm
even that the saves would not transfer between
hmm
even like significant updates. And
Yeah.
there's I,
With games as big as that, I wouldn't
I'm
say
trying to
it's a
figure out
realistic expectation.
why exactly. But yeah, like well the thing is like a lot of
hmm
early access games like they will keep your save, they'll do that and they'll do updates. But I also know that
hmm
maintaining a save database is tricky. And I have to
It's
imagine one of the things with Baldur's Gate 3 being a big
hmm
project, and this is just a guess, would be that
hmm
so much content is being worked on constantly by so many different hands and so many different people. There
hmm
is no way to maintain a save or flags for certain things or possibilities that
Yeah.
are being made.
Quest quests get
Yeah.
constantly updated, inventory, possibly items get
stat
changed, items get balanced, stats change,
stat
skills.
calculations change. I mean,
Right.
Christ, man, like
There's
the
so many variables in a game like that.
Yeah, that's just part of the genre too. Like the
hmm
CRPG genre in general, like they're known for being massive, sprawling
hmm
games with huge branches of dialogue and choice. That's like the whole point of it is basically like playing a tabletop at your computer, and the DM is the game itself. You know, like that's
right.
hmm
always been the appeal of those.
All right. So like I said, I just wanted to bring that up because I
hmm
tend to look at things more as like expectation sort of situations. And when I saw that that was primarily listed in the title of the article, I'm like,
hmm
were was that was that promised? Did they? Because to me, if it's in the title of the article, my first thought is, oh, they promised it, but they're not giving it to us. But then I'm like, Baldur's Gate 3 is
No,
a big fucking game. Like, did they really make that promise? Like, that is huge. Holy
They-
shit.
Larian might be insane, but they're not that insane.
yeah, they even mentioned like that no, that wasn't gonna happen. But
hmm
it's one of those things where I think people themselves developed the expectation that they would find a way to do that or they would find a way to fix that
hmm
because a lot of early access games do let you do that, but they're also not in that genre where you probably have a team of writers that's 40 to 50 people deep
hmm
making side quests or making I don't even know. I don't even know how you begin to start trying to make a game like that. That's too big for
hmm
me. I got my little pea brain, like some of the stuff that I'm working on is like is big enough for me,
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
about to say the scope of something like Baldur's Gate 3 is
It ties knots into your brain just thinking about it.
yeah, it's daunting on a level I don't think too many
It's like
people.
daunting to even look at that game and think like, do I want to try and play that at some point? Like how much time do I need to sink into that? Like how much like
Mm.
it's almost overwhelming just like looking at just creating a character even.
All right.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
with all the classes and all you could choose from.
So this is one of my so I have a tradition on this show that I've now started with guests on this show. It's been a ongoing thing, and I like to call it the hot take. And that is
Ooh.
the moment of the show where I allow our guests to air out a hot take of their choice freely without judgment. You have the floor, Jay. If there is a hot take you would like to put out there into the universe, this is your opportunity to do so on the show.
Man, I don't really have any recently hot takes. I mean, like I'm not really like a hot take type.
Type of guy. Fair
Jeez.
enough.
I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, my hottest take is like it's not even a hot take. It's just like the last couple months have just sucked. But that's all like personal reasons and personal things like that. Like, man, just get back to me. Maybe I'll think of something by the end of this segment. Like, but yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough. I hit G with this, and his hot take for the show was, if you take away the music out of Jet Set Radio, it's not a very good game. Yeah.
I think you could say that about a few games. Like, I feel like it would diminish the appeal of certain games and stuff like because like that game is very. It's all about the aesthetic. It all comes together with the tracks, the cel shaded style, like the gameplay and everything like that. It all kind of melds together to make like a package. If you take out any individual part of any game, you could probably say the same thing. Like. Just trying to think of like another example of that. Like, I don't know, say Yoshi's Island. Say you took out the egg mechanic entirely and it was just running and jumping and floating. Like, you still have something there, but it's like that missing mechanic. You would notice, like, well, shit, I need something. Like something to make it different.
Yeah, gotta have a hook there, something to.
Yeah, something that like really stands out your design. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe that's like a bit. I don't think it's a hot take though. It's just there's a thing that goes around, which is the write what you don't know, and I totally disagree with that. Like, sure you can like learn some new things, you can kind of voyage and explore, but like if you know something and you know it well, and you think you have an idea there that nobody else has like messed with before, fucking do it. Just do it. Put it down. Like that's what's gonna make your thing different and awesome and interesting. And like even if it's not what you expected in the end, at least you did it.
Right. All right. Fantastic.
Yeah, 'cause write what you don't know. That would be interesting. Like a doctor writing about let's say fantasy elves and having completely no clue about it.
I mean, you can get some really cool ideas out of that. Like,
Probably, but
I
it
mean,
will also crash
I
and
think
burn
that would
quite
probably
quickly.
help with like perspective, though, right? Like, write what you don't know, because like,
yeah. Well,
I'll say it depends on the topic.
I was gonna say
It can work out well, but it can also crash and burn quite ridiculously.
to kind of I guess just like conclude the thoughts on that. Like, it's something where I heard that for Breath of the Wild and a lot of Nintendo games, they hire people who have never made a game before. And it gives that fresh perspective of like, I don't know what this is, but I know how to code and stuff, and you get some of those fresh ideas and those interesting takes and those interesting mechanics. So there is something to it.
Is good. Yeah, having a mixture, I think, is good.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess it's still not a hot take. Like I said, I just don't really have a. I used to have so many of them, and I think that's why I don't have them now. Is because it's one of those things. It's like, why am I upset about this when there's so much other stuff going on? You know?
Yeah, that that's totally fair though. I get it. Like
Yeah. I mean,
these. Hmm?
in terms of crashing and burning ridiculously, yeah, write what you don't know. Then you get things like The Room.
I mean, I'm sure he knew what he was doing. I don't want to like.
I think
I
that's
wouldn't be too
less-
sure
that's-
about that.
Yeah, I think that's less not know. Like he, as far as I know, he like didn't really know the difference between the two film things. That's why he spent like gobs of cash filming on 2 different cameras. But like, it's one of those things where he knew what he wanted, and he was gonna do it by God, regardless of what other people thought. And I think that's powerful too. Like,
It's
like
fine. It's
yeah.
fine. It certainly brought entertainment to a lot of people.
yeah, like
I
it's
think there's a certain level of like respect to be given for like that dogged determination of like, I'm gonna make this fucking thing, and by golly, whether or not the earth burns by the time I finish it, I'm gonna have it made. It's gonna get made. I'm doing this.
It's powerful. Like, I mean, who cares if you make the thing that you want to make, and you are happy with it? Congrats, you know, like that's all there is to it. Who cares what other people think? At the end of the day, as long as you are satisfied with what you have made.
Fantastic. All right, so the episode. I'm gonna wrap this episode up here. At this point, I think this has been a fantastic time. Thank you, Jay, for coming on the show and talking about all kinds of different aspects of gaming with us. It has been a very enlightening sit down.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, I had a lot of fun. Honestly. We got into some cool topics there.
I try to tailor the show a little bit to everyone I have on, or at least a little bit. I try to focus it down to what I think the show needs to be about to make it as interesting as possible, not just for me, but for the guests, because I like to have fun too sometimes. So Jay, this is your opportunity to promote yourself a bit. Where can people find you, find some of the work that you are working on, if you are allowed to? I know we had a conversation about do's and don'ts, so I don't know exactly what you are and are not allowed to talk about or promote, so I'm gonna leave that up to
Promotion
you.
gets interesting with the recent changes to the biggest website to promote stuff. But yeah, you can find us on Twitter/X, whatever it's going to be. I don't even know, but it's the main project I am working on as a writer, artist, musician, co-director, bunch of things, is Nanokin, and you can find a lot of updates on that at twitter.com/Studio Anjin. I'll go ahead and put some links for you guys to post up afterwards. I have my own personal one, which I don't even remember the name of because I just barely use it, but I'm on there. And I've got another little mini project thing, which is Sad Folks Interactive. You can find us at twitter.com/sadfolksinteractive. We're also on Mastodon. We're on Pillow Fort. We're on what are all the things? Co-host. We're on something else. Jeez, I don't know. Whenever people figure out where they're going, and they'll just lead you all there.
The Twitter one is UltraJDude.
Thank you. I can never remember because sometimes I change it.
Yeah. It's kind of like a situation like with Mega G Wolf, where his Twitter is
Super G Wolf. Yeah, his Twitter is Super G. Oh yeah, that's funny because I finally told G about the long con of a joke I was working on for the last like 6 to 7 months. It was supposed to be of a long con joke because anytime with G, if I have an opportunity to pull like a long con joke on him, I'm gonna do it. So my plan was his Twitter handle was taken by somebody else at some point, like Mega Jewel. So I had actually went out of my way to track this person down. I was going to convince them to give me back the handle for Mega Jewel. I was then going to change my Twitter handle to Mega Jewel and then at G with it as a joke and then give it back to him. Did not work out the way I planned. But that was the entire long con of a joke I was planning. It was supposed to work out. It did not work out the way I wanted, unfortunately. But you know what? Any opportunity to pull a joke on G
it was worth a try.
Oh my god.
Exactly.
Dude, if I would have pulled it off, I would be so happy. As always, everybody, you can find our show on a variety of podcasting platforms such as Google, Apple, and Spotify, and on our YouTube channel where you can watch this video show every single Sunday. Hopefully, as long as I don't fall asleep or something between now and the end of the day, the show should be up before I go to bed tonight, as always. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've had a lot of fun lately with the different guests and different topics we've gotten to talk about, looking at different aspects of the gaming world. I get to bring people into our little universe every single week. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Jay, thank you for coming on. And
Thanks
as always,
again for having me.
And as always, everybody, keep on gaming and have yourself a fantastic week, or at least the best week you possibly can. All right. And that, as they say in the movie business, is a wrap. Oh, hour 25. I think I did pretty well. I let it go on a little longer. I was like, I'm digging this conversation right now. I'm just gonna let it ride.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna just let it ride. Damn, I never considered some of those things this week. Damn. Okay. Shit. But yeah, man.
Cool.
Thank you for coming. I hope you had fun.
Yeah.
I really do. I really hope you had.
Yeah, it was good. I mean,
fun.
if you ever want to do a repeat show in the future or something like that, I'm happy to guess.
Yeah.